My name is Linda Coulter. I'm 72 years old, and I've always prided myself on being a cautious woman. Not paranoid, just careful. The kind who double-checks locks and rereads every document before signing. I was a nurse for 34 years, mostly pediatrics, but I did my time in ER and ICU, too, so I know the face of real urgency. I know what fear smells like on a person. That's why I can't believe I fell for it. Hook, line, and scalpel. After my husband Alan passed 5 years ago, I moved from our home in Michigan to a retirement community in Sarasota, Florida. I was lonely, yes, but it was a nice place. Palm trees, quiet walking paths, bingo on Tuesdays, and a decent view of the sunset from my third floor unit. My daughter Rachel visited when she could. She lives up in Boston, and I had some pleasant enough neighbors. But when you go from hearing a husband's voice every day to nothing but birds and weather reports, you start to miss conversation, even if it's just small talk. I guess that's how I became so chatty with the new on-site nurse, Grace, though she insisted I call her by her first name. She was tall, mid-40s, with the kind of warm smile that made you feel cared for, like she'd already seen your chart and wasn't alarmed by anything in it. The first time she approached me was at our community's monthly health screening. She gently asked about the swelling in my legs, made a soft noise of concern when I told her I'd been having shortness of breath, and said she'd flag it to the new visiting doctor, who was apparently doing rounds with priority cases from our zip code. "It might be nothing," she said, resting a hand on my arm. "But there's a newer scan now. It catches early-stage cardiac embolisms before they cause a stroke or AFib." She didn't try to scare me. She did the opposite. She said she'd seen it in patients like me. Strong women who ignored small signs until it got serious. That hit me square in the pride. I wasn't going to be another widow who let herself slip away unnoticed. The next day, Dr. Redding called. His voice was calm, confident, maybe a little too slick in hindsight, but it felt professional. He said he'd reviewed the notes Grace sent over, and that my symptoms were textbook indicators of early pulmonary embolism, which could be fatal if untreated. I told him I had Medicare, and he said not to worry. They worked directly with providers to streamline emergent care, and they'd schedule the scan at a nearby mobile unit they partnered with for discretion and convenience. "We don't like to alarm people unnecessarily," he said. "It's easier when folks can get seen close to home." It sounded sensible, and Grace showed up the next day to drive me herself. The van looked like a mobile clinic, logos on the side, medical chairs inside, even the soft hum of equipment. A tech drew my blood, ran an EKG, and gave me a bottle of contrast solution to drink. I asked about side effects, but she handed me a sheet that looked like something I used to give patients myself. It all felt real. And then, 2 days later, I got the call. Dr. Redding said my scan revealed suspicious clots and a potential arterial narrowing that needed surgical intervention. "Minimally invasive," he said, "but time-sensitive." I froze. Surgery? I hadn't felt that sick, just a little winded, a little tired. But then again, I was 72. Maybe I had adjusted to the symptoms so gradually that I didn't realize how bad it was. He said their affiliated outpatient clinic had a cancellation for the following week, but because it was outside of Medicare's default coverage area, I need to prepay a refundable deposit of $8,900 to secure the slot. My heart actually raced, not from the diagnosis, but from the price. Grace told me Medicare would. "They'll reimburse you," he said smoothly. "It's a technical issue with provider tiers. Happens all the time. We'll give you everything you need to file, coded invoices, proof of necessity, the works." I hesitated. I called Rachel, but she was swamped with work and said, "Mom, if it's life or death, don't wait. I'll wire you money if you need it." I didn't want her to have to do that. I had some savings from Alan's pension, and I figured I'd just get it back. So I did it. I went to my bank, withdrew the amount in a cashier's check made out to Redding Clinical Group, and handed it over to Grace the next morning when she came with the surgical prep packet. She smiled at me like a daughter would. "You're doing the right thing, Linda. You're being proactive. This is why you're still here." That made me cry, just a little. The appointment was set for Thursday. Grace said she'd pick me up at 7 a.m. and drive me to the clinic. But Thursday came and went. Grace didn't show. Her number went straight to voicemail. I called the clinic line Dr. Redding had used, but it rang once and then cut off. I tried the mobile scan van, deadline. I walked down to the front desk and asked about Grace, and the receptionist blinked at me. "Grace," she asked. "We don't have anyone here by that name. Our on-site nurse is Jeff. He's been here for 2 years." I felt like the world tilted sideways. I showed them the appointment card Grace had given me. It looked real, clinic logo, date, time, but the receptionist shook her head. "Ma'am, I think you've been scammed." My knees buckled, and they had to get Jeff to walk me back to my unit. That night, I stared at the check receipt, the mobile van's fake brochure, and every single warm memory I'd had of Grace's voice. I wasn't just ashamed, I was furious. I'd seen real emergencies. I'd held dying babies. I'd counseled grieving mothers. And now here I was, conned by someone who probably wore a name tag she printed off a laptop. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark, wondering how deep this went, and what I could do to stop them from doing it again. I woke up the next morning with my mouth dry and my fingers trembling, not from age or illness, but from a cocktail of rage, shame, and disbelief. How could I, of all people, a retired nurse who once trained others to spot red flags, have fallen for a pair of crooks who knew exactly how to press the right emotional buttons? I had always told my daughter Rachel to watch out for phishing emails and robocalls, and now here I was, sitting on my recliner with an empty bank account and nothing to show for it but a fake appointment card and the sinking realization that I'd never get that money back unless I fought like hell. So I started with the obvious. I called my bank. The manager, a kind young man named Victor who always greeted me by name, listened to everything and promised to flag the transaction immediately. "Do you still have the check stub?" he asked. I did. It was neatly folded next to the phony paperwork. He squinted at the payee name, Reading Clinical Group, and tapped something into his computer. "That's not a medical provider in our system," he muttered. And it was cashed through a third-party mobile deposit service, probably with a burner account. I felt sick. I gave Victor copies of everything I had and asked if law enforcement could trace it. He gave me a look I didn't like, one that said probably not, without saying it out loud. "But," he added, "file a police report right away. And call your insurance and Medicare fraud hotline. Sometimes the paper trail shows up later." I left the bank with a folder full of photocopies and the weight of 1,000 regrets. At the police station, I spoke to a weary-looking officer named Detective Sylvia Carmichael, who said she'd been seeing more of these phantom clinic scams lately. "It's like they franchise deception," she said bitterly. "They rotate names, logos, even medical jargon. Somebody out there is building the perfect life for lonely seniors." That hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't just a target, I was a template. Sylvia took my report seriously, asked sharp questions, and promised to enter my case into their elder exploitation unit's database. But I'll be honest, Mrs. Coulter. Unless we get a break, like a facial recognition hit or someone tries to pull this again, we're looking for ghosts. Ghosts with syringes and stethoscopes, I thought grimly. On the way out, I sat in the lobby, staring at the fingerprint ink on my fingers, wondering what had happened to me. I used to teach CPR. I used to administer IVs and calm screaming parents. And now here I was, swindled like some wide-eyed tourist at a magic show. Rachel flew down 3 days later, crying when she hugged me, furious that I hadn't told her sooner. "Mom," she said, "you don't have to protect me from this stuff." But it wasn't about protection. It was about shame. I didn't want my daughter to know I had gotten tricked because a woman wore scrubs and touched my shoulder like she cared. But Rachel was relentless. She contacted local news, filed complaints with Medicare, and even found an online forum for scam victims where someone in Ohio, had posted a warning about a Grace and Dr. Redding using similar tactics near Dayton. The post was 6 months old, and the author never followed up, but the details were eerily close. Fake mobile van, urgent surgery, refundable deposit. We contacted the user. Turns out he was a man named Harold Rains, 81, a retired auto mechanic. He lost $12,000. I didn't want to talk to anyone after it happened, he told us over Zoom, his eyes cloudy with emotion. My own son called me a fool. I told him he wasn't. Neither was I. And that gave me an idea. What if we did something those scammers wouldn't expect from seniors like us? What if we talked? Rachel helped me draft a post. Simple language, big font, heartfelt tone, and we uploaded it to every senior forum and Facebook group we could find. I'm a retired nurse, and I got scammed by a fake clinic. Here's what they did to me. Please read and share. The response was overwhelming. Not just sympathy, but patterns. A woman in Arizona described the same van. A man in Georgia remembered the same fake brochure. One even posted a blurry photo of Grace getting into a beige Toyota with temporary plates. We were piecing together a jigsaw puzzle of horror, one that crossed state lines and had probably netted hundreds of thousands from people like me. And then Rachel found something even more damning. An ad on Craigslist offering part-time patient intake assistant work, requiring no license, just a friendly demeanor and willingness to travel. The contact email? reddingkara@consolemail.com. That was our first crack in the armor. We created a fake profile, Rachel did it, using a generic name and a fake phone number tied to a burner app. She applied. 2 days later, she got a reply. "Hi Megan, thanks for your interest. We'd love to chat more about your availability and have you meet our lead nurse, Grace." I couldn't believe it. The nerve. They were still active. We took it straight to Detective Carmichael, who, to her credit, didn't waste a second. She had her cybercrime unit trace the burner email to a host server in Clearwater, and within 48 hours, a sting was being planned. Rachel went in as Megan, wearing a wire, meeting Grace at a local coffee shop under the pretense of joining the mobile medical team. And when Grace walked in, I nearly passed out watching the footage. It was her. Same gentle voice, same confident poise, same fraudulence wrapped in empathy. Only this time, Detective Carmichael's team moved, and before she could even order her latte, Grace, whose real name was Natalie Kemp, was arrested on the spot. Turns out she had 3 aliases, a fake nursing license from an online diploma mill, and a criminal record under seal from a medical billing fraud conviction in Nevada. Dr. Redding was actually her boyfriend, Marcus Hale, an ex-farmer rep with a smooth voice and a history of Medicare grifting. They'd been running this operation in 4 states, changing names, emails, and logos each time they were close to being caught. But this time, they weren't just dealing with law enforcement. They were dealing with me, a woman who had spent her life saving others and wasn't about to go quietly into humiliation. The news picked up the story, called it "The Nurse Who Wasn't," and ran my face next to hers, not as a victim, but as a whistleblower. I cried the first time I saw it, not because it hurt, but because it finally felt like fighting back. Natalie Grace Kemp and her partner Marcus Hale were indicted on multiple counts of fraud, impersonating a healthcare professional, and elder exploitation across state lines, charges that could put them away for over 20 years. But honestly, I didn't care about the sentence as much as I cared that someone finally believed us. Detective Carmichael called me personally when the court date was set, and I sat in the front row every single day of the trial, wearing my old nurse's pin on my collar, not to prove anything to them, but to remind myself that I was never the fool they thought I was. I testified. So did Harold Raines and 5 other victims. Some cried. Some got angry. One just sat silent, staring down the woman who smiled while stealing her retirement. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. Rachel squeezed my hand so hard I thought she'd break it. The local news called it a win for digital age justice. But to me, it was something deeper. It was a message that no matter how slick a scam is, our voices still matter. I'll never see that money again. Not really. The restitution order will take years to even dent what they stole. But I gained something better. I got my dignity back. I helped take down 2 predators, and now I speak at senior centers once a month, reminding others that trusting people isn't a weakness, staying silent is. And if you're watching this, wondering if you should come forward, do it. Your voice might be the one that breaks the next con.